Hello YouTube, it's Line here with Hobbies and Man once again, and today we're going to be doing another light novel review. Today we're going to be looking at The Faraway Paladin Volume 1, written by Kanata Yanagino, illustrated by Kususaga Rin, and published by J Novel Club. So, the demographic for the manga adaptation of this is shonen, so we can say that this story is also shonen, although that really depends on your preference. I think this is published under a male-oriented magazine, but it doesn't really have like a age demographic, so there you go. The genres here are isekai and dark fantasy. This is, you know, something in line with something more along the lines of Overlord in terms of dark fantasy, instead of like Rise of the Shield Hero. So there you go. And in terms of adaptation, it has both a manga, which is also by J Novel Club, or an anime. I don't know if the anime has already come out. I think it has, but I can't really remember. So there you go. And right off the bat, the rating for this is a 5 out of 5. I think it's really, really, really good. So yeah, the premise is basically that in Mushoku Tensei type style, a very boring loser kind of blight on society kind of guy dies, and then he has a lot of regrets for his life, and somehow he gets isekai'd into this fantasy world and vows to do better. Then he happens to be reborn as a child, and he is raised and taught by 3 undead heroes, one of them being a saintly, like a saintly like priestess, one being a very barbarian-esque type of warrior, and one being a very powerful mage character. So he learns basically to be a paladin, essentially. That's basically what ends up happening to him. And so that's why it's the Faraway Paladin. So there you go. And it's a really, really good story. It's very much like the first volume definitely just deals with him growing up and then leaving the nest. So this is a coming of age story specifically, right? So yeah, the plot line here is super solid. Like I said, it's very similar to Mushoku Tensei in the broad strokes. So that's good. And it also has a much more appealing main character, where Rudy is kind of like still shitty. I would say that our main character here, Will, actually happens to completely shed his you know, earthly version, and tries to use the few things that he remembers from his old world in order to make himself even better in this new one. So he tries really, really hard to not fall into the same kind of like neat kind of ideas that he fell to when he was living on Earth. So yeah, we follow his life from rebirth to when he basically becomes an adult by the standards of this world, which is about 16 years old, if I remember correctly. There's this ceremony that I have to do at 16 in order to gain protection from a deity. He does this and then sets out on a new adventure. So yeah, there's a lot of big stuff happening. Most of the big stuff happens past the second half of the volume, around the last third. So it's kind of like a Brandon Sanderson type story in that sense, where there's a lot of buildup, and then the last kind of third of it is just pure action. And it's a really, really good read. So I don't really want to get into any of the major things that happen, because they're all very, very specific and related to what the character is going through, and I don't really want to spoil anything in that sense, since they're not really generic, right? So other than that, we have the characters here. So like I said, there's basically like 4 characters in the story. There's Will, the main character, who is an isekai human. Then we have Blood, who is the barbarian warrior character. He is actually a very earnest man, a very nice person actually, but at the end of the day, he is just a barbarian warrior, and his idea of like dealing with a problem is just having bigger muscles than the other guy. And although he does come off really dumb, a lot of the things he says make a lot of sense in this, you know, harsh fantasy world. So that's good. Then we have Mary, who is the priestess. She is aligned with the Earth Mother Goddess, which is kind of like very standard. She's basically Gaia or something. And she is a very devout woman to this goddess and prays to this goddess a lot. and she teaches Will how to commune with his guardian deity, basically. And then we have Gus, or Augustus, who is a wandering mage. He is a very kind of sagely man, but he also has a very harsh attitude, where Blood and Mary are basically Will's parents. Gus is more like the grouchy old grandpa. So it's really fun. And then we have a few different gods, because in this fantasy world, the gods are actual entities instead of like conceptual beings like here. So we have a whole slew of them. There's a whole pantheon, but the ones that matter are Matter, who is the earth goddess. Then we have Gracefiel, who is the death god, and Stagnant, which is the kind of evil god of the group, or at least the ones that we know. So even though Gracefield is technically the death god, the kind of evil death god, Satan kind of character, is actually Stagnate. So there we go. In terms of world building, this is a very standard isekai kind of European style fantasy world. However, the function through which our main character is isekai is interesting. It's different. It's kind of this multiverse idea. There's this fluctuation, this flux of souls, and that means that in order to avoid stagnation of the souls, they have to be switched around through different places. And our main character's soul went from Earth to this fantasy world, and he retained some of his previous memories as some sort of boon, due to the fact that he was so regretful of how shitty he was in his previous life. So that's cool. In terms of magic, we have a magic words kind of type of power. So you need to learn the specific ways in which words interact with the world in which you form sentences, and then these sentences allow you to create spells. And so you have to be very aware of this. However, because humanity is very bad at maintaining a proper like very specific and continuously repeatable way of speaking, these magic words tend to act in ways that are not necessarily how you wanted them to be. And so this causes them to be very hard to use. And so Gus teaches Will to use magic in the simplest ways possible, which I think is really, really good. We have gods and guardian deities. They're basically the same thing, but at the age of 16, a person in this world will swear themselves to a god, and this god will then offer them protection and help in certain cases. And generally, it's just a medieval Europe type of setting, which is really, really good stuff. I think that they're supposed to be non-human, like humanoids, like non-human sentient species, but I don't remember ever seeing one in this first volume. However, there really wasn't that many times for Will to interact with any other living thing. So there you go. Now, in terms of artwork, I think it's really, really interesting. It does kind of have this same very like gothic, like almost not really clear kind of art style that I would say Overlord has. So that's cool. However, it is sometimes difficult to really appreciate the artwork because it just kind of looks like really impressionistic kind of blobs. But there's other times when the art style is so crisp and clear that it looks just glorious. And I really, really like when those situations happen. But it is generally not super clean. Now, in terms of fan service, there isn't any, technically, I guess. There's one or two scenes where Blood and Will kind of talk about, things that you could consider fan service, but they never actually go through with any of it. So I would say that this is a no fan service type of book. So there you go. In terms of a rating here, it's a 5 out of 5. I really have no complaints about this story. I was interested all the way through. It did take me a while because I felt like it was a lot more dense than the usual light novel, but I quite like that. So I'm really, really happy with this book. Overall, it was super interesting, and I really have no complaints about it. In terms of similar things to this story, Overlord is probably the most similar. Mushoku Tensei is another one that's kind of similar. Other than that, I really can't think of any ones that I have read off the top of my head. You could argue that Goblin Slayer has some similarities to it, but I wouldn't really say that because Goblin Slayer is significantly darker in terms of fantasy than any of the other ones that I mentioned. So there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Let me know what you thought. And thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys later.